Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. So I want you to imagine you falling in love with someone that's going through a divorce, and your relationship blossoms and you love each other, and they are going through the process of getting the divorce. They have kids, but they're going through the process. You realize everything is working out great. They're following the right path to separate from their wife or husband, and they seem to be making all the right decisions. And then one day, you find out that they love their kids so much that they can't stand to be away from them anymore. And in fact, they want to move back in with the person that's soon to be their ex. And, they haven't been living together. They had been separated, and now they want to move back in. And now you are left on the sidelines wondering what just happened. In fact, this person loves your kid or kids. This person loves you. And he or she clearly shows that they love you. They give you and tell you all about their undying love for you. And now they want to move back in with their soon-to-be ex. Just imagine that unfolding, because this is the email I got today, and I wanted to talk about this because it highlights something that a lot of people get themselves into. And that is, when you grow attached to someone who has trouble making a commitment or taking steps in a direction and following that path with a knowing, with a belief that this is what I want to do. This is how I want to spend my life. Now, that doesn't mean they can't change their mind. The email I received today is about a woman who fell in love with someone, and he was going through a divorce. He has 3 kids of his own, and he eventually moved in with her. And she thought this was great. This was going to be the relationship that she's always wanted. And he turned out to be an amazing father to her son. But this man in her life began to realize that he was missing his kids, and he was going to miss his kids growing up. So his thought process was, I'll just move back in to my old home so that I can be with my kids, even though I'm in love with you. And the woman who wrote to me said, now I'm the occasional hookup. Now I'm the person that he is cheating on with his wife, and I never thought I'd be in this position. And so I laid out this scenario for you for a couple reasons. One is that when you get connected, when you fall in love with someone that still has unresolved issues in their life, and I mean relationship issues, when they're still going through some sort of finalization process, but it's not final, this is what can happen, because they have not taken the final steps to get out of what they're in, which means now they are in between one side or the other. And it can become sort of a battle for their time, their energy, their love, because they're splitting it sometimes. They're splitting it in between you and the other person, or family in this case. And another reason it's kind of a dangerous place to go when someone hasn't finalized this stuff is that, yes, there could be a change of heart. There could be, because it's not over until it's over. This doesn't help the woman who wrote to me, but this may help you if you have ever considered this. I mean, there are relationships that can work like this. They do work, where you're finalizing one thing and getting into another. But that is risk. That is a big risk, and you just have to be aware of that risk. So in this case, a woman got involved with a man that eventually decided to go back home, even though he wasn't in love with his wife and he was in love with this other woman. And he really, there's no other way to say it, he wanted his cake and eat it too. He wanted the scenario where he could have someone that he loved on the outside of his marriage while he had his kids on the inside of his marriage. Everyone has a right to change their mind, But when you're with someone who makes the decision that they want to keep you in their life and they want this other family, and that is not the agreement that you have, this is the point where you need to start making decisions for yourself and understand that their decision, or in this case with the person who wrote me the letter, his decision is that he wants both. I mean, this is clear. He wants both. He wants access to his children, which he has every right to have, and he wants to live with his wife, and he wants to have you. And if his wife and you are not on board with this, I mean, I don't even think his wife knows that he's still seeing you. I mean, I don't think you mentioned that, which makes this even more challenging all around because this will come to a head one day. This will explode. So one thing to remember is that when you're with someone that has trouble making decisions, that has trouble making a commitment one way or the other, or wants it both ways, that this is the type of personality quirk that you'll have to deal with from this point on. Even if their relationship ends with the other person and they come to you and they want to be with you, now you still have someone that you have to question is going to be the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. Because right now, when you break it down, in this case, this is a husband who has a family that is cheating on his wife. I mean, this is the breakdown. And let's just say that he decided to actually go through with the divorce and be with you. You have to know that the way he's living his life now is the way he lives his life. And you will be with someone who seems to be okay with cheating on the person he's with. And if you think that it could never happen to you, you just have to be careful with that thought process. I'm not saying people can't change. I'm not saying there aren't people out there that have cheated and stopped cheating in the next relationship, because there are. There are people that have stopped cheating and don't cheat in the next relationship. But if you're telling me that he lies to his wife to see you, then you just have to be aware that if you do end up together, this is a person that has the ability to do so. And this is why I'm a bit weary about people who have trouble committing, people who have trouble sticking with decisions, is that they will find a way to make everything work out for them, even if they have to lie to get it to work for them. Which is really the main point of this episode today, is that when you are with someone that has trouble committing to one path or another, you're going to find that they more often than not will make stuff up to make things work for them. Again, I'm not saying it's everyone. I'm just saying you have to keep this in mind. Someone who has trouble committing to one path and going in one direction and knowing with conviction that this is what I want to do and this is how I'm going to lay out my life and this is the path I want and you're the person I want, when that doesn't exist or they're not taking action to make that happen, and instead they want their cake and eat it too. They want it both ways. What you may end up with is someone who makes stuff up so that they can get everything they want. He may be a very nice guy, but he still is making stuff up, or in this case, being enabled by you to be able to get whatever he wants while you wait for him, while you wait for him to divorce, while you wait for him to change. I'm going to tell you right now, it's very, very difficult to want to change when you have everything you want. He has his family, he has his mistress, he has everything he wants right now. It's very difficult to want to change that when you're getting everything you want. If you suddenly said no more, then he would have a decision to make. And I'm not saying he has to make the decision between his family and you, because if he really wants to have a relationship with you, then he is going to go through the process of divorce and see his kids based on some custody arrangement that he makes with his wife or his ex-wife, and then he's going to have the relationship that he wants with you so that you will have the life together that you have told me in your letter that is really important to him. He can arrange things where he has access to his kids and access to you. If he's really serious about wanting you in his life and being in a relationship with you, then he will make decisions that get you two together and give him the ability to see his kids. because people do this all the time. People get divorced. People make custody arrangements. They have visitation arrangements. People do this all the time. He is just taking the path of least resistance and doing what he is being allowed to do. His wife is letting him back in the house, and you are continuing to see him. Now, I know where you are. You're in this maybe obsessive state. I'm so in love with him. I can't stop thinking about him. Someday it'll work out. And when you're in this place, it's one of the hardest places to get out of, to help yourself, to love yourself, to be in a space that benefits you, that heals you. Because if you're not healing you, what you're doing is waiting for someone else to heal you and make you happy. And when you put all your reliance on someone that seems to make stuff up and make things happen in any way possible so that it's easier for them, then you're pretty much in a no-win situation. And you're always going to be on the sidelines, even if you're together. Because as soon as it doesn't work out for them, they're going to make something else up to make it work out for them, so that they can take the path of least resistance. So the best thing I can say for the person who wrote this letter is that there is an easy answer and a very difficult solution. The easy answer is the hardest path to follow, which is going no contact. Because you're in love, because you're attached, because you believe that this is the relationship of your dreams. And what you're not doing is really, and I hate to say this, judging him, being judgmental about his character, looking at him and asking yourself, if this is the type of person I want in my life, is this the type of person that I want to spend my life with? Someone who is willing to set me aside even after he's committed to me, and then live with someone else while he only uses me when he needs me on certain nights. I mean, you really have to judge someone's character when you are putting yourself in this position. And instead of looking at the relationship that you want, look at the person that you want in your life. And I'm going to play you a segment momentarily on obsession because I really think you need to listen to this. A lot of the components I talk about getting out of obsessive thoughts and getting into a better healing space for yourself, they're going to apply to what you're going through now. I think it's a good topic to play on the Love and Abuse podcast because I'm sure a lot of people go through this as well. So I'll play that momentarily, but I do want you to ask the question, if you were to write down all of the wonderful components of a person, not just in a relationship, but just wonderful components of a person in general, does he fit these components? And it's important that you include even the stuff you don't like. You can't just put everything, well, he loves me and he makes me laugh and he's such a kind and warm and caring person. And he's also cheating on his wife. You have to put this down as one of those components that you either appreciate in someone or not. And you might say, yes, but he's not cheating. His wife knows it's a temporary arrangement, or whatever the story that he gave you is. I'm pretty sure his wife is not on board and okay with him having a mistress. And if she is, well, even that's fine, but you're not fine with that. She could be okay with it, but you're not. So then you have to write down the quality of a person that is okay hurting you. That is okay if they hurt the one they love. Because the two-sided solution here is for him to commit to a path. I'm either with my wife and my kids and I'm not with you, or I'm with you and I go through the divorce and I just have to arrange to see my kids in whatever way possible. And I don't want this to sound anti-kids and the kids are on the back burner, nothing like that at all. I'm just saying that if he wants this relationship with you, he's going to move mountains to make it happen. That's what people in love do. They move mountains to make it happen. What this sounds like is, I want this and I want this, and I'm willing to suffer by living with my wife, and I'm being sarcastic, so that I can at least see my kids. It's an excuse. It really is, because there are other ways to do what he's doing. He just chose the path of least resistance, and because it was allowed by all parties involved, or at least the ones that know about it, he is getting away with it, which means he has to change nothing, and he knows you're in love with him, so there's no reason for him to change because you're always going to be there for him. At least that's his thought process. And this is why it's so important for you to make decisions that are right for you so that you aren't sitting there waiting for years and years. When there's not enough loss, there's not enough incentive. People that have trouble committing to a decision, they typically need big loss as their incentive. So like I said, write down the qualities that you appreciate in a person and in a man and in a lover and in a husband. Write down all these qualities, because you're going to find that as a person, you may not like some of the qualities you're seeing in him. Because this is what happens after the honeymoon phase. After you go through the period where you're so in love and everything is wonderful and everything is fresh and new and it's all so romantic and you love every second that you're with the person, there's a settle down point. And that settle down point, you get to see the real person underneath. You get to see the person that feels comfortable in their own skin being themselves, instead of the person that's always trying to impress you as if you're always on the first date. I mean, that's the honeymoon period where you go through just the intensity. The intensity runs its course. I mean, there can still be intensity in relationships years later, yes, but the newness of it all, it settles. And it can settle in a good, healthy way when the people underneath the settling are the people that you love. When you love yourself, when everything settles, you can bring this love of yourself into the relationship. When you are authentic, when you are honest, when you are committed, when you are loyal, you bring these qualities into the relationship. When you're with someone who has personality characteristics that aren't in alignment with what you appreciate about other people, this is what comes out in the relationship. This is vital. This is why, like my girlfriend says, the way they treat the waiter is the way they're going to eventually treat you. So if you're out and about and they treat the waiter dismissively and they get upset at them and they're just rude and whatever, they're going to bring that home someday because that's in them. That's in their character. That's in their personality. So you can see nothing but good in someone else. And that good can be everything that you see in the beginning. But how are they treating other people? And if you say, yes, but they treat them wonderfully and me wonderfully, then you have to look even further. And in this case, with the person who wrote the letter, are his values what you value in a person? Because if you can look at someone like that and said he left someone that truly loved him and truly supported him, and he said he loved her, and instead of doing everything he could to be with her, be with you, he instead went back to his family and chose to be with her and you, is that the kind of value you like? And I'm not trying to put any judgment on anyone listening. I'm just asking this person who wrote the letter, is that a value that you like in a person? Because if it's not, then you seriously have to consider a long-term future with a person like that. Not that he can't change, but right now, this is what you see. You only have what you have today, and you have to make decisions based on what you see and what you're experiencing today. So let me just play this segment from the Overwhelmed Brain podcast on obsession. I think it's going to be important for you. And when it's done playing, I'll come back and say my final words. Here it is. Welcome back. I'm going to talk about obsession for a little bit. Obsession in the sense of I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop wanting to check social media. I can't get it out of my head. And I spend all my time obsessed about it. That person, that thing. Typically a person. We're usually obsessed about someone else. Usually an ex. At least that's in my realm. I hear from a lot of people that are obsessed about their ex. And they want to get them back. They want their ex to love them again. They want their ex to return to their life. And I've talked about it a couple times before, and it is one of the hardest behaviors to stop. At least, again, in my realm, it has been one of the hardest behaviors to stop, to help clients, to help listeners, to help them get past it. And speaking from my own place of obsession, when I was obsessed, I went through a long period, sometimes, weeks or months, where I wanted my ex back. In fact, my first long-term relationship, the obsession I had of wanting her back led to a depression. obsession can lead to depression because you probably are forgetting everything else in life. You're probably putting everything else on the back burner, and you want to continue waiting for someone to change, to come back to you, to make you happy again. That's where all my focus was. I was waiting for her to make me happy again because she was my only source. She was my source of happiness. Without her, I couldn't be happy. This is why you hear me repeat on this show over and over again. It's vital that you practice self-love, self-compassion, self-care in any way, shape, or form, and that you become a source for yourself so that you don't rely on someone else to do it for you. And I know, a lot of this comes from childhood when we don't feel worthy enough. We feel like we're going to be abandoned. We feel we're being neglected by our parents, by our caretakers. All of this exposure to the type of caretaking that doesn't benefit us when we're children that we grow up with and turn into obsessions and emotional triggers and worries and jealousy and possessiveness. I've done it all. I've been there. I've been on, have I been on the other side of jealousy? I don't remember. But I've definitely been jealous and possessive and fear of abandonment, putting all of my time and energy into one person and not really focusing on myself. And that's one of the things that I hope everyone listening, I hope you listening right now can understand that when you get into a relationship, that you invest in yourself in that relationship. So if it fails, if you break up, then you have a solid foundation on which to land. You have a solid foundation for both of your feet to be planted so that you don't get stuck in obsession mode. So you don't get stuck thinking that you will never be happy again. Because that is that thought virus stuff that I was talking about in the last segment, is that we have this awful, dreadful thought that we'll never be happy again. And it's because we put all of our eggs in one basket. We saw that person as our source. When that person's not in our life, we unplug, and who are we without them? It's like that song, "You are the wind beneath my wings." Let's not go by what that says. I get it, and there's a sentiment behind it, and I'm not making fun of it. But we don't want to take it so literally that that person is our only energy source. We don't want to take it that literally. We want to love the people that come into our life, yes, and we want to enjoy the time that we have with them when they come into our life, and we want to share experiences and share our histories and share our hopes and dreams of the future. But we don't want to make them the number one 100% source of our fulfillment, because if they leave, if they die, if they go away in some other way, shape, or form, then what are we left with? And it is going to hurt. I'm not saying that the pain doesn't go away or the grieving of losing someone doesn't go away. It absolutely has to happen. There's a process when we become attached to someone. When we share ourselves with someone else, we create what I like to look at, it's kind of a metaphor, a third person in the relationship. There is me, there is you, and then there is us. And that third person has its own way of being. It's its own way of showing up in the world. And that third person needs maintenance and needs work. And we need to continue, you and I, working on that and making sure that third, probably a bad example, person, that third person in our life, us, has everything he or she needs to live the happiest life possible. So we go through life investing in us, me investing in me, you investing in you, and we investing in us. If you don't like the term third person, that's fine, whatever you want to think about it as, but it does take on a life of its own. And I actually like that, because that means that I can still go play my guitar. I can still go read. I can still go enjoy myself outside without being attached at the hip, but still enjoy when she comes with me. In fact, want her to come with me. You can still have these feelings for someone else and wantings and desires and needs that you want to fulfill from someone else. You just have to watch the percentage. It sounds analytical, but let's look at it that way. If I thought that I couldn't be happy without my girlfriend, then I am setting myself up for huge failure. I'm setting myself up to be very disappointed. Now, I speak from a little bit of wisdom and experience because everyone that I've ever been with has left me, which has given me a little bit more resilience, a little bit more understanding of what the process is, and a lot of insight to how I invested in relationships, because I used to be all about them. When you make yourself all about the other person, your obsession begins before the breakup, before you even know you're going to break up, before anything happens, before the person ever leaves. If you are invested 100% into them and you are not invested in yourself, you don't have friends outside of them, you don't have your own hobbies, you don't have your own activities, then you just have to be careful because, again, if they are not there anymore, what do you have? What is your foundation? I want you to think about that. What is my foundation? If anything were to happen, what is my foundation? And if you can't get your mind off, well, I just can't picture my life without them. What would happen? What would I do? I can't go there. Then you've already started the obsession process, I hate to say. And hopefully the person you get with or you are with never leaves, always loves you, always supports you. Hopefully you never have to deal with this. But in my lifetime, I've dealt with a lot of heartache, and I hear from people that go through it and you never know what's going to happen. So it's not like you live paranoid thinking someone's going to leave you. It's just that you need to be aware, self-aware of what seeds you're planting so that when the storm comes, you know what's going to grow and what's going to die. Probably not the happiest way to put it, but you get my point. So let me read you an email. This is, like I said, I want to talk about obsession in this segment. This email, I'm just going to read you a little segment of it. I got it many months ago, so I have a feeling the situation has changed, but I'll call this person Joe. Joe says, recently a woman started working in my office. She seems like an amazing woman, and my heart went wild almost immediately. I'm very interested in her, and I have made some subtle moves so that I can get to know her better. I want to know more about her before I push for something more. I think interoffice relationships are a bad idea, but I'm still interested in her. Then he put a little frowny face. I have a difficult time reading her, and I feel like I'm getting mixed messages. It may be just my imagination telling me what I want to hear. I'm torn as to how to proceed and have begun obsessing, which will likely drive her away. Here lies the issue, a deep-rooted dysfunction of obsessing and analyzing. I don't know where it comes from, and I know it has had a negative impact on several of my previous relationships. I've listened to a number of podcasts, read books and websites dealing with letting go, and tried many strategies, all unsuccessful. I am baffled as to how to stop this behavior so that I don't torture myself or hurt others in the future. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. I hope your backlog of questions is not too long. Ha ha. It is. It's a very long backlog. And thank you in advance and have an awesome day. You are amazing. You are amazing. Thank you too, Joe. I appreciate you reaching out and sharing this with me. And now you know why I brought up obsession today, because of Joe's question and because I see this on the Overwhelmed Brain Empowerment group in Facebook. If you're not a part of that, feel free to join on Facebook. You can check that out. I see questions like this. I get them in email. I hear them from clients. And personally, obsession, like I said, is one of the most difficult behaviors to deal with, because it's so deeply rooted into many factors in yourself. It's so deeply rooted to self-love and self-compassion and self-worth and self-esteem. All of these things that we need to practice all the time. I need you to practice this stuff. I need you to treat yourself as your best friend, as the person that you want to be treated as. I need you to make sure that you keep fulfilling yourself, even if you're with someone else. Because when we put our all into someone else, we start to lose ourselves. And then when they're gone, who are we? Where do we land? What's our foundation? Keep this in mind as you go forward in life so that you're not setting yourself up to fail. We don't want to do that. And I know it's hard. I know a lot of people have a challenge doing this, but this is what this show's about. And this is what other shows and people and coaches and therapy, they all are touting that it's important to love yourself. I don't like to use the words, just love yourself. I just like to say, practice self-love, practice self-compassion, practice self-respect, practice self-fulfillment. Anyway, so Joe, I'm going to get to you right now. Where you are, at least many months ago when you wrote this, you were probably in that in-between mode of, should I do this? Should I not? Should I ask her? Should I not? I'm getting mixed messages. I don't know what to do. That over-analyzing place that you're in. This is where you make the decision and fail or not. I hate to put it that way because this may change your relationship with her. Maybe you like the subtle flirting if that's going on. Maybe there is a chance that she wants to be with you. But I'll tell you what my girlfriend said. I mean, this isn't about your letter. She told me this after we first met. She said, I get sick of guys who don't just come out and ask. I'm not saying all women want this. I'm not saying that this is a good way or a bad way. I'm just saying that she said, some guys, they show interest, but they never come out and ask. And then many months later, they'll finally gain the courage and ask. And my girlfriend says, if you asked 4 months ago, I would have said yes, but now I'm seeing someone. So this is good to keep in mind if you're interested in someone and, you get to know them and you think you have similar interests and maybe there's mixed messages, maybe there's not. I think you should look for definite signs of rejection because if you see that, then it's probably not going to go your way. But if there's mixed messages, maybe there's something there. Maybe there is. So what do? You get out of that stagnation of overanalyzing and just ask, knowing that you could fail, knowing that you could get rejected. Again, this is why self-care is so important, so that when rejection happens in your life, and it does, that you have a solid foundation to land. Because it's like getting pushed over. I just pushed you over. You're ugly. I don't like you, or I'm not interested in you, or even I'm already married, or I'm dating someone. So I'm going to say no to you. It just feels like you're being pushed over and like, oh, what do I do with that? What you do with it is you regain your composure, and hopefully you have composure through self-care, through self-love, compassion, respect, all that stuff. And when you get back up, you can say, okay, I'm back. Great. Sorry, I didn't know that. I'll certainly leave you alone. And then she might go, that's okay. Thanks. I'm flattered. Or maybe not. Or if you're asking a guy, that's okay. I'm flattered, whatever. Or maybe not. And then you move on. Then you might have some awkward days or not. But the best way to get out of overanalyzing and obsessing is just to take action right away. And I really love finding out as fast as possible. I never did this in the past. I'm not telling you that this comes from years and years of wisdom. This comes from years and years of failure. This comes from years and years of not taking action. And I'm not just talking about asking someone out. I'm talking about anytime you're overanalyzing anything, stop in this moment and make the decision and do it. Let's just say that tomorrow doesn't come. You have to make the decision today. For Joe, it might have been, you know what? I just wanted to ask, if you're not seeing anyone, would you like to go out to dinner with me some night? And if she says, oh, I don't know. I don't know. I got to think about it. Then you step back and you go, hey, that's cool. I totally understand. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just wanted to ask just in case you were available and you had any interest. But if not, everything's cool. I don't want to make anything awkward. Just wanted to ask. And whatever that person says, great. You just go by it. But really, the overanalyzing is facing our own response to what happens. I don't want to face that rejection, so I'm going to analyze it more, or I'm going to strategize in a way so that I don't get rejected. Maybe I can sneak her a note, or maybe I can ask friends, is she available? I mean, some of that's okay, but the idea behind facing your own response and being afraid of how you're going to take it, that's typically where the overanalyzing, or a lot of the times, can come from. So what we need to do is not be afraid of our own response. Go through it in your mind. Play it out in your mind before you do anything that you're overanalyzing. Let's just say that I asked this question and this person rejected me. What would happen? Oh, geez, I would feel so bad. Yeah, but go through the motions. Actually imagine it happening and go through every single moment of that event. And then when you're done, you'll realize, okay, that didn't feel very good and it might be awkward, but I'll make it through it. And if you can't feel that way, if you can't feel I'll make it through it, then find a way to ask where the response isn't something that you feel completely attached to. Like, I like the idea of asking questions that I'm not attached to the outcome with. A good example, and I'm just kind of veering into the dating scene for a second here. Let's just say that I was on the dating scene and I wanted to ask someone out I might say, hey, I'm going to be at the bookstore tomorrow. You're welcome to join me. And then leave it alone. Because they're going to say, oh, thank you. It gives them a choice. And then I go on my merry way. And when I go to the bookstore tomorrow and they're not there, I leave it alone. I don't go back the next day and say, I didn't see you at the bookstore. Because now you're backing them into a corner. I would rather just not talk about it. And if they mention it, hey, I was going to get to the bookstore, you just go, oh, no problem. You know, it's just an open invitation. I'm going to be there again tomorrow, but it's totally up to you. You're not obligated to meet me there. I just thought you might want to join me. You always leave that open-ended feeling, like they have options, like you're not sitting there waiting for a yes or a no. I mean, you don't always do this. This is how I would do it if I was on the dating scene nowadays. And I knew the person, somewhat. That way I avoid the weird rejection, not that I couldn't handle it, but I would rather not feel that. So I'm just going to keep it open-ended. And if that person didn't show up to the bookstore, I might go, okay, there's probably no interest there. But if the next day they say, you know what, I really want to get there. I really want to see you. I'm so sorry. When you going again? I'd be like, wow, they are interested. Let's do this. And I would set up another day to go. So anyway, let me come back to the obsessing part and overanalyzing part. If you're in that state of overanalyzing, there's a few things you can do. One of them is asking yourself, if I knew what to say, what would I say? That's a weird question because you may not know, but it's kind of a little brain trick. Another way to look at it is if I knew the future, what would I decide then? That could take you one way or another, because you might say, well, I know she's going to reject me, or I know he's going to say no. And then you might say, well, then I would decide not to ask at all. And if you go there, then don't go in that direction. Then you've made your choice, right? You've stopped analyzing. You've made the choice. Yeah, but I could ask. That's what's going to happen. I could ask and they could say yes, or I could go in that direction and that could work. Then make the decision. Maybe you do need to risk failure. Maybe you do need to make a decision that could lead to some sort of rejection or bad path or whatever. But that's all about getting better at making decisions. We talked about that earlier. Another thing of overanalyzing and obsessing is you don't know the answer. You're not sure, so you don't know what to do. You don't know what your next step is. So ask yourself, what has to happen in order for me to be 100% sure? What has to happen in order for me to be 100% sure? And in Joe's example, I might say, what has to happen for you to know 100% that she's interested in you? What has to happen? He might say, well, she has to come up to me and say, I really like you. And that might be his qualifier. And then I would say, do you think that'll ever happen? And he might say, well, probably not. So what'll happen is that Joe will realize that he is analyzing until he waits for this qualifier to exist, to show up. And the qualifier never shows up because he has a belief that it'll never happen. So he puts himself in this self-perpetuating loop. So this is why it's a good example to ask yourself, what has to happen in order for me to be 100% sure? That way, whatever you're overanalyzing, whatever you're obsessing about, if you know what has to happen so that you're 100% sure about whatever it is before whatever decision you're going to make, then you can also ask yourself, will that ever happen? I'll know 100% sure that they still love me if they post a picture of us online and they have a big heart next to it. Well, do you believe that'll really ever happen? No, I have no faith that'll happen. All right, then there's your qualifier. If you are using that as the fuel to analyze continually, then you may realize that that will never happen. And if that never happens, then you realize the futility of your obsession. But I don't want to overanalyze that. So let's go into the next one, which is next question, which is, what is absolutely true today in this moment? You want to use that as your guide, not the past, not the future. When you're obsessing, when you're overanalyzing, you ask yourself, what is absolutely true right now in this moment? Because if you look at the situation or the person and you say, well, in this moment, that person hates me. That's what you have to go on right now. That's what you make the decision. Base it on today. And then our brain kicks in and says, yeah, but what if tomorrow they realize how much they love me? What if tomorrow? What if? As soon as you jump into that what if mode, you restart the cycle of obsession. And that's why asking the question, what is absolutely true today in this moment, and then adding the statement, knowing it will never, ever change from this moment, what decision would I make then? That's a great way to start understanding the futility of obsession and how to start little steps out of it. I'm not saying that this is going to be the escape route out of it and you're free. It could be, but a lot of people need very little steps. It's like getting out of the warm hot tub in the winter, where little steps to get cold and cold and colder until you get warm. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that. I know that getting out of warm water in cold weather is not something I appreciate, but it really feels good staying in there. So how do we get out of that? It sometimes takes either just jumping out, which is something like cold turkey. Hey, let's just do this cold turkey. Let's make this decision cold turkey. Or creeping out and getting that towel and getting warm and so on and so forth. Now let's get to the next thing about obsessing and overanalyzing. Remember that stopping behavior requires stopping behavior, even when you're compelled to continue it. What this means is that the physical act, stopping, has to override your wants and needs. This is why so many people have trouble doing it. But the good news is becoming a better decision maker helps you stop things cold turkey. So let me just unwrap that a little bit. In order to stop something like obsession, you just have to stop it. But that's like, maybe trying to tell an addict to stop smoking, stop drinking, stop doing drugs. It's not easy. So what we need to do is become better decision makers. This is why I had a segment on decision making. When you become a better decision maker, you can do things faster. You can do things with more efficiency. You can look at your life and say, no, damn it, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to be in this rut. I don't want this continuous cycle of analyzation and wondering and hoping and waiting. I want to make a decision now regardless. And this is what I did after my marriage ended and I was upset and I really wanted to get back together. It came to the point where I finally decided that, damn it, I've got to move on. I've got to drop this idea that we're going to get back together. I have to make believe that she died. That's the visualization I used. I imagined she died. And there was no way that she was ever going to come back. That was hard to do because that meant I had to accept that there was no way that I'd be with her anymore. But doing that really started the healing process, really allowed me to move on so that when we communicated next, I could be in a healthier place. I wouldn't be so attached to an outcome that would never come. I had to decide that in this moment, I needed to make this outcome something that would never happen. The outcome that I wanted, us back together, I had to make sure that I believed that it would never happen. So I just imagined that she died and that was it. There was nothing more I could do. I came to that level of acceptance. It's not easy, but you can do this. You can get to that place where in this moment, if I had to decide, what would I decide? And if I can't decide, then in this moment, I have to realize that I know it will never be the way I want it. Then what would I decide? That frees you up. It frees you and it also lets them go and they feel it. I don't know if they feel it 1,000 miles away, but in my life, it sure seems that way. I don't know what's going on there, but as soon as I let someone go and heal and allows them to move on, so I'm not continuously reaching out to them or thinking about them, it sure seems that they are free of me. Because when we communicate again, there's none of that lingering attachment. So there's some really strange stuff going on there, but when it happens, it's pretty wild and it allows both of you to move on and be free. And it is possible when you're talking about relationships that you could get back together as new people or not. The freedom part of it is you're not attached to either outcome. You might like being together and that might be in the back of your mind, but letting go of that attachment to the outcome really helps free both of you. And that's a better feeling than obsession. I was talking about how to start realizing the futility, is because once you get to that point where you understand obsession is futile, It is something that continues to recycle over and over again, but gets you nowhere. When the futility rises up and you finally realize it, that's when it can stop. That's when you finally break out of the cycle and say, I've had enough. And so one of my bullet points is you keep obsessing because there's not enough negative reinforcement to stop obsessing. So most people continue obsessing until they're exhausted, and then they realize how futile it is. So you might have to get to that point of exhaustion. You might have to get there. And because you're not getting enough negative reinforcement, for example, you're obsessing about an ex and you look on their social media and they're with someone else. And it feels so terrible. It feels so bad. But it's not bad enough to make you stop obsessing. When that happens, it's not a big enough negative reinforcement. But what if you saw that they were married and had 3 kids with this new person? Would that be enough? This is where if it's enough, if there's enough negative reinforcement, it'll hopefully finally break the cycle of obsession. This is why sometimes I say overindulge and, find out everything you can about something. This isn't my advice necessarily. This is just something I suggested a while back, where sometimes when you overindulge in something and expose yourself to so much negativity, you are finally so negatively charged by it that you break out of the cycle. It's not exactly the best advice because it can be so powerful that it just destroys you inside. But for me, that's what I did. I had to do it. When I was obsessive, I had to keep checking on the person. I had to keep looking them up. I followed them. I mean, this is when I was younger. I did so much to make sure that I saw all the negative stuff that was going on that I did not like, that it finally broke me of it. Again, I don't suggest that. It takes a special type of person to be able to get through that. But that overexposure and constant negative reinforcement was helpful for me to realize the futility of my obsession. Let's see what else I have here. Obsession removes logic and replaces it with false hope. This is really important to know. This is like one of those one-liners, like, I'm obsessed, so all my logic is removed and replaced with what? False hope. Yes, but it's real hope because I want it to be. No, it's false hope. You just have to accept that it's false hope. But Paul, what if you're wrong? I'm not. Just accept it. It's false hope. And if I'm wrong, it'll be in your favor. Because the person that you're obsessed about will probably come out, yeah, but then I'll be in another relationship. Yeah, but you'll probably be happy. And if you're not, then you'll probably go back with that person. I mean, I could probably argue that 6 ways from Sunday, but just come to accept that your logic is removed and replaced with false hope. And when you think, oh, false hope, that means that it's never going to come true. Exactly. You get into that space of it's never going to come true. And this helps you make a decision. What if you're wrong? Then that what if keeps you obsessed. You can see where I'm going with this. This is sort of a side note. Obsession is one of the most difficult behaviors to coach someone out of. This is from my perspective, because no matter how much work we do, there'll always be downtime where they obsess again. So keeping yourself busy, that could work, but it's difficult. It's very difficult to keep yourself busy all the time. Plus, you need downtime. You need time to yourself. The problem with obsession is that you usually take all your free time and waste it in that false hope that someone or something will change. So again, I'm trying to help it add to the futility. If you're in an obsessed state, then I'm connecting with you right now. I know I am. I just want to reinforce the false hope, the futility, and the never-ending cycle that you put yourself in. All right, the next thing. I have a lot to go through here. Obsession is refusing to let go of something that you can't have. It's more than that, but the type of obsession I'm talking about is just that. You can't have it, yet you want it, so you keep thinking about it and waiting and hoping you'll get it. That's just kind of something that I probably should have said at the beginning. That obsessing is refusing to let go of something that you can't have. And when you think that way, it, again, adds to the futility. Let's see, what else can we add to this futility? Obsession is a refusal to allow your desire for it to die. It's the path of keeping an unhealthy belief alive. It's like keeping someone on life support because you'll miss them if they leave, even though they have no quality of life left. And I know I'm on thin ice there. I don't want to get into that talk or debate. I'm just saying that when there's no brain activity or when there's no brain and you keep the body alive, that might be something that you can look at as your refusal to allow your desire for it to die. It's just a comment on futility. I know this is a sensitive area for some people, and I don't want to linger on it too much. Next thing is obsession is a complete focus on what you want and what will make you happy, but a lack of focus on the pain being inflicted, whether on yourself or others. I want you to really think about that. Obsession is complete focus on what you want and what will make you happy, instead of focusing on the pain that's being inflicted on yourself and others. When you change your focus to the pain being inflicted, that can help you understand the path and how damaging it is. Obsession is an endless cycle of disappointment and going after your desire, looping back into itself so that you get stuck in an endless feedback loop. Let me unpack that one. In other words, the mouth of desire eats its own tail of disappointment. And the visual of that is an endless looping of unmet needs, meeting disappointment, meeting unmet needs, meeting disappointment. You might have to listen to that again. You might have to write that down. The visual for me is that Ouroboros symbol or whatever it's called, where a snake is eating its own tail and it continues to loop. Or you can look at it as that figure 8 infinity symbol. It is a cycle that repeats that you can't or you don't get out of, as if the mouth of desire eats its own tail of disappointment. I'm going to leave that open to interpretation for you. It works for me. It may not work for you, but when you think about it in those terms as an endless cycle of disappointment and unmet needs and unmet desires and disappointment over and over and over again, you realize that you're inside a barrel rolling down an endless mountain, and unless you pop the top of the barrel and get out of it, you're going to continue rolling and banging and causing yourself so much pain and agony that you just need to take the chance and pop the top off and get out of it. Again, these aren't all, hey, just think about this and you'll be free of obsession. This is more like, let's plant these seeds so that obsession doesn't have too much to hold on to, so that obsession becomes something so futile in your mind that it's pointless to do it and that you are sick and tired of it, so you stop. It's really a mental mind trap. And when that continuous cycle of disappointment and unmet needs and unmet desires keeps looping and feeding back into itself, it's a mental mind trap. You got to get out of that cycle. Obsession keeps you in that cycle. In the last episode, I ended with that endless cycle of disappointment. Going after your desire loops back into yourself, and you get stuck in that endless feedback loop of disappointment meeting unmet needs, meeting disappointment over and over and over again. And that's a great visual to have to help you understand the futility of obsession, of overanalyzing, of overthinking. And I want you to continue with that thought process. Continue remembering that obsession is futile. Say that to yourself. Obsession is futile. It doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. And then when your yeah buts come in, what if? That when that happens, you repeat it to yourself. No, obsession is futile. I'm not saying that's going to resolve your obsession. I'm not saying that that's going to take you out of it. I'm saying that every little bite-sized morsel of information here is a seed that gets planted so that when the storm comes, I said this in the last episode, when the storm comes, what's left growing and what has died. And what is left growing is the knowledge that no matter how much you obsess, no matter how much you analyze, no matter how much you continue thinking about something before you make a decision, the acceptance that nothing ever changes and overanalyzing and obsessing is futile creeps right in and gets you to the point of, I'm sick of it. That's when obsession can really stop leeching your energy. Boy, when you can get to that place of, I'm just so sick and tired of obsessing, you will stop. You might think, but I'm there now. I'm sick and tired of obsessing. No, you're not. Because if you are obsessing, you're not sick and tired of it. When you're sick and tired of it, it will stop. This is why I'm trying to inundate you with all the facets, all the angles of obsession from the last episode into this one, so that it drills down into your subconscious mind to the point where you finally take action. You finally make decisions that work for you, that are right for you, so that you get out of the endless loop of disappointment and unmet desire and unmet needs. I want to help you get there. And I wanted to create this part 2 episode because I'll probably never talk about obsession again. I might in a different podcast, but in this one, I've addressed it maybe 2 or 3 times now. And it's usually so self-initiated, so self-regulated. And I've noticed that a lot of people, even when they get help, they'll still obsess anyway. So this is why it's very difficult to tackle obsession. And believe me, I've done a lot of research on this, and there's a lot of people that don't know how to help you get out of obsession without rehashing the same old information that other websites and other books and other people say. I see a lot of resources on trying to stop obsessive thoughts, and they're all the same. And I've tried them, and they don't work. I mean, they'll help incrementally. Every little thing helps incrementally. I'm hoping that this information that I'm putting out there into the world, into your ears, helps fundamentally, helps in bigger increments and huger leaps and strides in your brain so that you can get to that place faster. So if you have any type of obsessive thoughts, overanalyzing, overthinking, hard to make decisions, and you're stuck in that continuous cycle of, I don't know what I should do, and they're all similar, they're all related. I'm not saying that obsession is the same as overanalyzing, but it can be. And it can have the same effects in your life because you end up doing that instead of all the things that you probably should do in life, including self-care, self-nurturing, self-compassion. My point is, when you make strides in your mind and get out of obsession, then life goes back to normal. Life goes, well, as normal as it can be. Life goes back to a place where I'm finally spending time and investing time in things that I want to do instead of things that I want that I can't get. So let me go through the rest of my notes here. I want you to remember that the solution to obsession is realizing it's a pattern with no escape. Yes, that's not the solution, but really, if the realization takes place, if it's full acceptance inside of you, then you will escape it. But it has to be full acceptance of that. It's a toxic journey with no end. And I'm hoping that this realization will shake you from the obsessive cycle. But like I said in the last episode, you have to fully jump into it knowing that what you're obsessing about will never, ever end. And that is tough. If you accept that, that is disheartening. It feels awful. This is never going to end. I want it to end. Well, it's not. I don't want that. When I feed you that information, when I say, no, it will never end, your brain's going to resist it. You are going to feel like you just want to shut this off and get it out of your system. And then you're going to prove me wrong. That's what our mind does when we are given information that we really don't want, that we want to reject. You're going to prove me wrong. So when I say this will never end, I want you to prove me wrong. I want you to do it. Now, another thing to remember is that you can't catch a ghost. Now, what that means is that when you want something, you're really making it up in your mind because you want it so bad. For example, you have an ex out there and you want them back, and so you create this visualization that they're going to come back someday. And this visualization is just a fantasy. You just make it up and you hope it's true. I call that chasing ghosts. You're not really, well, that sounds like Pac-Man, but you're not really chasing anything tangible. You're chasing a fantasy. You're chasing a visualization. You're chasing a false hope. And I know, and I hear this all the time. Yeah, but what if? And that's when you have to really bring yourself back into the moment and make decisions in the moment, because you always look at the trend. What has happened up to this point will keep happening. That's pretty much how I look at things. What has happened up to this point will keep happening. If I've not been able to get this person or get this job or change this situation yet, it's not going to change. So I am helping to feed this reinforcement inside of you so that you know that it will not change. And when you know that you're making all of this up, that they're going to change or things are going to change, you might have to take that huge reluctant leap into acceptance of something that you don't want to be true. Because if that's true, then I'll be unhappy and I want to avoid that at all costs. So I'll just believe that I can get what I want so I don't have to be unhappy. There's a futility in that statement right there. If I believe that this is just a fantasy, then I'll be unhappy. And I want to avoid that at all costs, so I'll just believe that I can get what I want so I don't have to be unhappy. This is why obsession continues. This is why the cycle repeats, is that we believe in the fantasy and we continue to believe in the fantasy so that we don't have to be unhappy, but really what we're doing to ourselves is making ourselves unhappy by believing in the fantasy. It's that snake eating its own tail cycle of continuing to be disappointed, meeting unmet needs, meeting unmet desires, meeting disappointment over and over again. This is why obsession is so powerful. It's so permeating and it takes over our lives and keeps us from doing all the things that we want to do in our life. I mean, there's probably those thoughts when you're obsessed. I mean, there were for me, like, I just want to go out and enjoy myself. And I keep becoming obsessed about, I got to check social media. I got to check my email. I got to check my text. I got to check my voicemail. I got to check this. I got to check that. I got to reach out to them. I got to follow them. I got to, all these obsessive thoughts. You get sick of it, and you got to get sick of it enough so it's futile. Again, I'm reinforcing this futility. Here's something I want you to try. This might take you sitting down for a moment in the quiet, or not driving, or writing it down. But even if you can do this in your mind, great. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to define your obsession and exactly what you want, and then negate it with regardless. I said this in the last episode, but I'll explain it. You define your obsession, and you define exactly what you want, and then you negate it with regardless. So, for example, I want her to love me. I want to be with her. So I'm defining my obsession. I want to be with her. I want her to love me. That's exactly what I want. I'm defining it. So you define what you're obsessed about. This is if you're obsessing, or if you're just listening and not obsessed right now, then you're probably looking at this differently. But just think about a time you were obsessed. For me, it was, I want her to love me. I want to be with her. Whatever that is, that's your obsession. Now what we're going to do is negate it with a negative regardless statement. Is that right? Negative regardless? We're going to use regardless after it. What I mean is you take what you've said or written down and put the words regardless of in the opposite of what you said. So for me, I want her to love me regardless of her feelings for me. So I want feelings from her regardless if she has them. I want you to say these things out loud. I want to be with her or him regardless of what she wants. Regardless if she wants to be with me or not. Or whether she wants to be with me or not. If you don't like regardless, use a sentence that negates what you want. I want him to change regardless of his desire to change. There's a good one. I talk to a lot of clients that want someone else to change. I want him to change regardless of his desire to change. Again, we're exposing futility here. I want to make money regardless of my choice to lay on the couch all day and do nothing. I just threw that one in there, but that might be someone's belief. I want to make money regardless of my choice to lay down on the couch all day and do nothing. There's something about that could be very futile. So let's put that in your brain. So I like the idea of negating the obsession with that. I want her to love me regardless of what she wants. Because adding regardless forces you to see what you're doing and exposes perhaps an insensitivity in you, and maybe even a selfishness. Not that you mean to be selfish, not that you mean to be insensitive, because you probably have very good intentions. But when you're forcing someone or something to show up in a certain way, you take away their ability to choose for themselves. You take away their choice. And if you take that away, then you are contriving and controlling something that will eventually fail because it was orchestrated on one side. You orchestrated it, whether they wanted it or not. And one-sided orchestration almost always, if not always, leads to failure. This is why you not only have to see the futility in your pursuit, but also notice that what you are doing is trying to change that which does not want to change. It's like if I asked you to desire manure. I want you to desire manure. And please just desire it. I promise you'll get used to the smell and soon you'll use it as a room freshener. I want you to desire the smell of manure, the feel of manure, I won't go there. The idea of manure. I want you to desire it. I am obsessed over this. I want you to experience this. You're not going to do it. I mean, unless you're one of those people, and I won't get into that either, but let's just say that you don't desire manure. You might be repelled by it. Let's hope you are. I mean, probably not good for you, but I want you to desire it. I want you to change who you are. I want you to be a person that desires manure. This is like obsession. This is what happens, is that we have these desires for someone else to be someone that they don't want to be in that moment, maybe ever, to change their mind, and they don't want to change it in that moment, or not ever, to be attracted to us, to love us, to give us our job back, to invite us back into the house, to let us take them out to dinner. All these obsessions that we can have is really our desire to want them to do something that they don't want to do. Yes, but if I can only convince them to change, then they'll change. If I can only convince them that I am great, because they can't see it, they're too blind to see it. So I want to control their filters. I want to control what they see. I want to show them that I'm great, and I'll do that by controlling their perceptions, because great people control other people's perceptions. I'm just adding a little bit more to the futility pile up here. And I say all of this because I've been there. If I'm offending you, I don't mean to. I've been there. I want you to get to that place inside your mind. And hopefully you can realize that me obsessing about you wanting to desire manure can be very much the same thing as you obsessing about someone else, wanting them to change for you, or see a different side of things, or see a truth that you see but they can't see. It doesn't matter. Everyone has to come around in the time they have to process things and see things for themselves. You can't go A to Z without B, C, D, and the rest. You have to take the steps to change your perception. And every time after I've been obsessive or overanalyzing things, and I finally just let them go and I just gave up because I was so tired of doing it, every time in my life when I let them go, finally the other person saw what I wanted them to see, but only after I stopped obsessing. And believe me, if you think, well, I'll just pretend to stop obsessing, it doesn't work. You literally have to stop obsessing for them to finally see a perception that you know is true. That is something that if you accept to be true, then you finally realize that your obsessions keep you from moving forward in life. And I know all the arguments, yeah, but what if they find someone else and they're happy? Well, if you love them, don't you want them to be happy? Yes, but I want them to be happy with me. That sounds a little obsessive, and you wanted to control them. Well, I don't want to control them. I just want them to see the new me. I just want them to see that I've changed. Then I would ask, are you changing for you, or are you changing for them? Well, I've changed in me. I just want to be with them. Do they want to be with you? Well, no, but they haven't seen the new me. Would you have become this new you had you still been together, for example? Well, no. It took the breakup, and then I realized a lot of things about myself. Yes, there's a lot of ways we can look at obsession. There's a lot of ways we can look at how our personal growth and development happened because of the hardships in our life, because of the things that have happened, that if they didn't happen, we wouldn't become the people that are now desirable to someone else. We broke up with someone and we go through a transformation process, and now we're this new person, but we wouldn't have become that new person had we not broken up. So what do? We can't go back to the way things were, because the way things were when we were that old person. So we can't do it that way. So we might have to meet on new turf as new people someday. And yes, we might be in new relationships. We might be doing different things. And we can look back and thank the person for breaking up with us. Thank them, or thank ourselves for breaking up with them, or be thankful for whatever happened, because we would not have had these realizations had that not happened. I would not have had the realizations I had if my wife didn't leave. I wouldn't have had these. And I am so grateful for the painful divorce. I'm so grateful for that awful heartbreak that she put me through, that I put me through, that I pretty much created, but she made the decision to leave. And I blamed her, and I wanted her to see the new me, and I wanted to go to therapy with her, and she didn't want to do it. And I am so grateful she didn't, because I was able to heal so much because I decided to work on me, work on my foundation, focus on me, instead of looking to her as my only source of happiness and joy. I'm not saying that's a problem. I'm not saying that you can't see someone else as a source of happiness and joy. Just don't make them the only source. Work on you. Work on yourself. Give yourself love. Give yourself compassion. Make sure that you are continuing to build that stable emotional foundation that you need so that you always land on your feet, so that when the hardships come, and they will come, when you fall over, you can get right back up and dust yourself off, allow your wounds to heal, do some grieving, and become a fresher, newer you with new learnings, new understandings, new ideas about the world, about yourself, going into the future without making the same mistakes over and over again. Don't want to get into that cycle of futility. I want you to remember that you are amazing, and nobody will ever, ever take that away. All right, thanks for listening to that. That was a majority of 2 episodes put together on obsession from the Overwhelmed Brain podcast, my other show. And I had to play it on Love and Abuse because obsession is one of those behaviors that when you go through it, it is just so hard to get out of it. It is so impossible. It feels like it's never going to end, and your mind is completely occupied 100% all the time, and you end up not living your life. You miss out on so much in life when you're obsessed about especially someone else coming back into it. And when you can quit the obsession through all the concepts or processes that I talked about in this episode, you could start living your life again. I mean, just think about, do I want to be obsessed for the rest of my life doing this? The answer is no. I'm going to answer for you. The answer is no. You don't want to continue an obsession. And I'm going to give you some bad news if you're in a state of obsession like this person who wrote the letter. Obsession never gives you the outcome that you're looking for. If you want someone back in your life, obsession is usually repelling. It is usually the anti-magnet that pushes people away. And if you're obsessed with someone who is in love with you or does want you, but refuses to change their own situation to come together with you, you have to accept that that will be the way it is because there's no reason for them to change. You might think you are the reason for them to change, but they have you. They already have you in this scenario that I just outlined. They already have you. There's no reason to change. They have access to you. There's no point in changing. They have everything they want. If that's not incentive enough to make changes that are right for you, to take steps that are right for you so that you get out of the unending obsessiveness, then it's time to work on how much you value yourself and how much you love yourself, and how much of your life are you going to waste on someone that isn't incentivized enough to change the way things are right now. I hope this helps. Thank you so much for listening. Share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. If you want to pinpoint the exact behaviors causing the difficulties in your relationship, head over to loveandabuse.com. And if you have the Mean Workbook and you want to join the private Facebook peer support group to connect with others that are going through a similar circumstance as you, send an email to paul@loveandabuse.com and let me know the email that you used to purchase the workbook so I can look you up. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant. Because you are. Thank you for joining me today. We'll talk again soon.